What's up, everybody? Thanks once again for joining us on Titletown South Florida, the Miami Herald's high school sports show. I'm Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor at the Herald, joined once again by David Wilson, our sports writer, covers high schools, recruiting. This time of year is David's time of year. We're getting ready for signing day, and we just went through what was ultimately it was an interesting and intense and ultimately a wild finish at the state championships in Fort Lauderdale. And we're going to take you all through that to discuss not only who won the championships, but also we're going to take a look at the national championship picture, which had a drastic change. One team, we know Chaminade, fell hard and completely out of that conversation after what happened to them in Las Vegas. But as of this taping, we're 2 days away from signing day, so some major developments with local kids, two of them in particular that we're going to talk about that are committed now to the University of Miami as Coach Mario Cristobal's class continues to grow and strengthen. And we're also going to look at our players of the week, that we do some shout outs, of course. So looking at not just some of the stars from state football weekend, but from basketball and soccer season that are already started. So David, well, how's it going? And how much did you enjoy that Explorer special, among other things, this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, state championships weekend is kind of always my favorite weekend of the year. They always seem to be, if not great, you get a great story out of it. And we had a couple of great games, and we ended it with one of it's hard, like 2 years ago in 2019, Columbus pulled off one of the craziest state championship wins of all time for their first title. And I don't know if this one topped it, but winning on a walk-off trick play is at least a pretty good encore act.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there for 2019, but I mean, this I got to think this will be hard to top, especially what led up to it going to overtime, a blocked field goal with 1 second left, you name it. I mean, this game had a little bit of everything. Before we get to those clips, I want to remind everybody, of course, you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or on the Miami Herald website. We also have it available as a podcast. We've been doing that now. In fact, this is our 15th episode, and all 15 are available on our platform, Megaphone, and then everywhere that you listen to your podcast, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. It's there for the listening. And
you relive the whole season now.
You relive the whole season, exactly. Like what you binge watch one of your favorite shows. You can do that now with us. So let's start with our game of the week, our play of the week, all rolled into one as Columbus took on Apopka in the class.
Game of the year, play of the year, I think.
Play of the year, yeah. I think I was saying player of the week, and I got tied up. Yeah, play of the year for sure. And the finish was what's probably going to be most talked about, but some of the unsung heroes in this game, I think, were on the Columbus defensive side of the ball and special teams, one of them being Hector Chavez. Here, let's start with this play. One of 3 fumbles that Columbus recovered in that first half that kept them in the ball game. Here's the fumble recovery by Chavez.
That's a hold.
Those guys really have come on strong, especially in the second half of the season, and really up against it after they lost TJ Capers, one of the best recruits of the class of 2024. And that at least kept Columbus in the game. They took an early lead, 10-3 at halftime, thanks to some offense, a touchdown pass from Alberto Mendoza to Jose Leon. But he set that up with this nice play to Fredrell Andrews, who made a great catch on the sideline. Take a look. Shout out to our producer, Pierre.
Slow motion. I think that's a first on this show.
There you go. The show continues to evolve, man. We're going to keep doing cool stuff like that. We appreciate it. And that shows you some of that toe drag swag you got there at the end, like the NFL Network guys say. Dalen Russell, tremendous game, had one of the key sacks in this game. Here's a look at that one as the defense continued to roll for the Explorers. And from that point on, it looked like Columbus was going to shut them down. But then with 4 minutes and 38 seconds, here comes Apopka with that running game. Tyson Davison, 46 yards right up the middle. And all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh for the Explorers. And making things even more tense after that, Apopka gets the ball back after a 3-and-out and drives down the field. They actually are able to get a timeout with 1 second remaining, and then everybody in the building thinking this is going to be heartbreak the other way instead of what happened 3 years ago. Amir Foster had a different idea. Take a look. And then they go into overtime. Apopka gets a field goal. Columbus gets the ball, runs a couple of plays, and then channels Nick Foles. And check this out. So as you see there, bedlam on the field, bedlam all across the stadium there as Columbus wins their second state championship since 2019. And, this is a program, as we've talked about, they for years, and, I saw year after year of them losing to Northwestern, Central, you name it, getting close, even getting to the finals finally a few years ago. But what they've done the last few years, this is 3 seasons of the last 4 where they have ended the season with a victory, if you count the one in the COVID year where they got the Tri-County Championship too. We talked a little bit to Coach Dave Dunn about that and how special this is for their program.
Special, it's really special. I go, our wide receiver coach goes, if you start yelling something special, they're going to know what it is. We just call it Explorer. No, we put this week.
Yeah, you hadn't run it this year.
No, not once. I called it one time as a college head coach. It didn't work, and everyone said I was an idiot. This time it worked.
Well, that's the Eagles ran. Eagles ran the Super Bowl. That was the Eagles Super Bowl play. Good job, coach.
The job that your defense did tonight, stop after stop, especially after the delay in the middle there, to keep the intensity and come back, pick up where they left off. What do you attribute that to? That intensity they have?
Believe it or not, our scout team did an unbelievable job this week of playing the other team's offense, and so they are the unsung heroes of running, because that's not an easy offense to mimic. They did a great job of doing it, and so we felt our guys were pretty. It's not easy to stop that. Everybody knows that, but our guys did a really good job of just coming up with enough key stops in the game that put them in some long yardage situations. They had to get out of the single wing, and I think that gets them out of their comfort zone a little bit. They were kind of, that's the thing that gets you a little bit nervous at the end of the game is, that's a great goal line offense, and they get the ball first and go to 10. You're kind of up against a little bit there, and I thought our defense did a great job.
Yeah, and your guys not only blocked the key one there, but two block kicks tonight. The job they did in the clutch in those moments.
Our big thing says, we said we had to win the kicking game, and I think the 2 block kicks kind of swayed the kicking game in our favor. We made 1 field goal, had a couple bad punts, but we had no kicks blocked. Our defense did a great job of pressuring the kicks.
What does it say now? I mean, Columbus football for a long time was getting close, but now you have 2 titles in 4 years.
Yeah, when you look at it, our guys literally in 4 years, we're 16-1 in the playoffs. Yeah. We've lost 1 playoff game in 4 years. Right. So I think it says a lot about where our kids have taken this program. I have an unbelievable assistant coaching staff, and we get great buy-in from our kids. I think when you see this, when you look at a game like this, it's not just 2 good teams. I think it's 2 really good cultures. And the reason why they're as successful as they are is because the culture they have at Apopka. And I think we're the same way.
David, they remind me a lot of the way Cardinal Gibbons in Broward, where they've joined the upper echelon now. They've established themselves, 2 state titles, kind of the same way now Gibbons has done it with 3. And as well as I do, it looks like they're here to stay, because this is a team sustainable year in, year out. Even if they don't win it every year, they're going to have a chance every year to be in the mix, don't you think?
Yeah, and obviously it's not like they don't have elite talent, because everyone in South Florida does, but they kind of do it similarly to Gibbons too, where it tends to be very good quarterback play, even if those guys are not like 4 5-star quarterbacks who are going to SEC schools, and great offensive line play, really great line play on both sides of the ball. I mean, the defensive line for Columbus this year was fantastic, and year in and year out they have a good enough offensive line to protect quarterbacks and run the ball. They didn't do anything too fancy offensively until the last play of their season, right? It's they've got a really, I think, Alberto Mendoza, their quarterback, is just really steady. Can make a spectacular play here and there, but for the most part is just like a really good pilot for that ship. They got a really good running back in Cedric Irvin Jr. is going to Stanford. And they won defensive struggles, intended to pull away late in games. The offense never really showed up for Columbus in this game. They had the one, like you said, 50-yard touchdown pass. Threw a costly interception, though, in the second half. Needed to win with defense, and that was something they could do. And then, Dave Dunn is as good a coach as there is in Florida right now. You see him pull that out of his bag at the perfect moment, and Columbus wins the state championship on a trick play.
Pilot that ship. We all saw what you did there with the Explorers, Columbus. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk before we switch gears to another game. Let's see. This is Amir Foster, who was the one holdover from that 2019 team, the one guy who saw the field that year. Here's him talking about that block kick and winning the title again.
Amir, you were here when you won it the first time against them.
Yes, sir. Before you guys the ring right here, baby.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's it like, coming full circle to cap your career with another one like this, the way it happened too?
It feels great. Last time I won, we won with a 2-point conversion for the win, and now this one with the game-winning touchdown in overtime. Man, it feels great. Love to you guys.
It always has to be dramatic, right? It always has to be exciting and relatable.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Talk about the block, because they were about to win it down there.
Yes, sir.
And what'd you kind of see on that play, and just to shoot through and get the block?
I seen everybody rushing. We had bring a lot of guys towards the middle, so I knew I had to get around them quick and get that block.
Yeah. And then what'd you guys kind of tell each other then after that? I mean, did it just feel like that's it? Like once that happened, you knew you were going to win in no time?
Yeah, we felt like we blocked that. We were going to get that W. We trusted each other and blocked it, and we got the W, man.
What'd you guys kind of tell each other? Because you had a lot of key stops as a defense tonight, and then you had the rain delay, and you still came back and did it. What'd you tell each other throughout the game?
We just kept motivating each other, telling each other to finish the game. Just always finish to get the state championship.
And what'd you think about this tonight, the crowd with you?
Yeah, I love the crowd tonight. Everybody came out and showed major support. I love it.
And there you have it. And after Amir Foster was able to talk to the man himself, Hector Chavez, the guy whose name always we joke sounds a little bit like he should be in the ing in boxing instead of a football field, but he really did. He really pulled up, he really did he delivered every big hit that defense needed in this game. 20 tackles, 1 fumble recovery, and we're going to see him for 2 more years on the high school level. Here's Hector.
The defense's effort tonight, stop after stop to keep you in the game. What did you tell each other throughout the game as the game went on?
We told each other, man, we worked hard from January to the day. So we told each other, we work harder than they did. We're not going to let them outplay us and beat us and outstrength us. You know what I'm saying? And we told each other, play every down like it's your last. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happened, and we got stops. We faced a lot of adversity during the year, so they scored, we were down, that wasn't nothing at all. We stayed confident in each other, we played for each other, and came out with the win.
What'd you do during the delay to kind of keep the intensity up and not kind of drop,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, we talked to each other, man. We kept each other up, kept the energy up. I don't know, man, we just went and told each other, listen, we up right now, but the score's 0-0. And we're not gonna, so we're gonna fight to say 0-0 fourth quarter. And came out here and that's what we did.
Yeah. And that field goal block, when Amir got it, what was that moment like when you finally had a chance?
Oh man, can't even tell you, man. It was so many thoughts going on. It was like, we gotta finish. We worked hard and we knew someday it was gonna come down to this. You know what I'm saying? We wanna thank God for everything because He gave us the ability keep fighting and keep playing and play to the last whistle, and that's what we did.
What did you think of the way you won the call to win it at the end?
Man, you got a long go down for that. That was a beautiful call. You know what I'm saying? We won, man. Yeah. State champ.
And Columbus celebrated into the night, and they weren't the only ones. If we go backtrack now to Thursday night, when Homestead took on St. Thomas Aquinas, we know this was the first of 2 historic games where you had a Dade versus Broward team in the final for the first time. And Aquinas in this one, though, the heavy favorite, even though Homestead hung in there, but from the get-go, they kind of flexed their muscle up front, and that was the kind of the difference. You could tell we had talked about it in the days leading up to it, that the running game was going to be a big deal. And Jordan Lyle broke through for the first score of the game. Right here, take a look. But the Broncos, to their credit, they didn't fold. They fought back. And here's Homestead on their second drive, as Joshua Townsend, most valuable player for them all season, found Richard Dandridge. Great diving catch by the Temple commit here on this touchdown. Take a look. And Homestead's defense made a key stop where you started to think, uh-oh, are they going to pull the upset? Here's Eduardo Nunez capitalizing here on this turnover. But just too much Aquinas after halftime, even though the game was tied and it got interesting. Hezekiah Harris breaks loose and puts Aquinas up by 2 scores, and this is where they kind of took control of the game right here. And following that, resilient Homestead, another nice touchdown pass for Joshua Townsend to keep it within 1 score right here on this play. He hits his wide receiver open over the middle. But it was James Madison for Aquinas who would deliver the dagger. It seemed like somebody every week, a different player does for the Raiders. This time it was his turn.
There it is.
But still, Homestead continued the fight. Javon Robinson, as Townsend threw his 3rd touchdown pass and cut the lead to 10, even though they ran out of time. Nice touchdown pass here by Townsend to cap a great year. In the end, it was the Raiders celebrating 38-21, and now, for a team that has 14 state titles, the most of any team in the state, now has 4 in a row for the first time in program history. There is actually something else to shoot for at Aquinas next year, and that's to go for 5 in a row, which no one in the state has ever done, and that's what they'll be back to do. But credit Homestead, too, because they're going to be now it becomes an off season that's going to be interesting for them, because with Philip Simpson gone to Nebraska, they'll have a familiar voice, but a new lead voice in the locker room in assistant coach Ronnie Thornton taking over. David, how do you see this? Because we know very well how kids scatter these days. Yep. Do the Broncos break up, or do they have a chance to at least hold maybe at least the core of these guys together?
Yeah, I mean, you hope. That's obviously the idea with keeping continuity, right? Is they've got this good core. They've got Josh Townsend, their quarterback, will be a senior next year. Isaac Brown, arguably their best offensive weapon, will be a senior next year. Bunch of those guys up front on defense, Eduardo Nunez, one of them, going to be a senior next year, underclassmen. They've got the pieces that if they keep everything together, they should once again be a contender in 3M, which is kind of a wide open, aside from St. Thomas Aquinas, which is probably going to next year as a massive, clear favorite in 3M. The rest of that classification is wide open. And Homestead with Josh Townsend coming back, one of the best quarterbacks in the state. I think he kind of proved over the last couple of weeks, and seeing the value he provides to that team, especially what we saw when he was injured. They should be a contender, but of course they got to keep it together. We know, like you said, it's not a secret the way that transfers and that kind of stuff affects football here in South Florida. I'd love to see Homestead be able to keep it together, but when it could we run into a Killian situation, right? Last year, Killian loses their coach, and a bunch of kids scatter, some to Palmetto, some to Columbus. Northwestern or Central, Booker T. They went all over. It was a little bit of a rockier transition there after Derek Gibson left. They took a longer time to name his successor, even though they kept it within the coaching staff. Northwestern clearly had, or Homestead, I should say, clearly had a succession plan in place. We'll see if it works out for them. I'd like to see it because they're one of the best stories in South Florida over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and that's the difference because from talking, I actually got the chance to talk to Coach Thornton a little bit afterward and Coach Simpson, and that was the whole thing. It felt like Coach Thornton was his heir apparent even way before this opportunity even came up. Like we're talking a year or two now where Simpson might have been, in position potentially where he knew this was coming at some point and said, you handle some of these things like I would. He started to kind of groom him to be the guy so the kids kind of get used to him. And let's see if it's enough, if that's the difference. Of course, the kids said all the right things. And, Townsend says he's in. Isaac Brown said, of course, we're coming back and this time we're going to win it, all that sort of thing. And that all sounds great now, but we'll see over the next few months if it does stick together. The one good thing also in their favor, that's a very good point about Killian. Homestead took it a step further and was actually within a couple of maybe a few plays and maybe a few players away from really having a chance to beat one of the nation's elite, not just one of the state's elite. So maybe if all those factors are enough, it'll be interesting to see, like you said. And it would be a shame because I over the years I've seen it too, where you have a team that bubbles up and is good, maybe even wins a state title once and then just falls apart and then they're never heard from again. And now they look not even close to what they were. I mean, I could name you a bunch of examples like that, and it would be a shame to see Homestead fall by the wayside. But a lot of up-and-coming contenders in that entire region, like Southridge. Right. Obviously, Columbus isn't going anywhere. Gulliver would love to get better. I mean, just to name a few teams that were in that little bit of a mix in both in 3M and in 2M that were, if guys start to scatter, you never know.
And historically, it's been tough. There's kind of three schools in the Homestead area, right? There's Southridge, right. There's Homestead, there's Southridge.
Even Killian.
And then Killian obviously is a little bit down there, like you said. Palmetto, occasionally kids from the Goulds area will play there. Right. Obviously, Columbus gets a lot of kids from down there. It's been hard for the three public schools that are really down in that southern Dade County. It's been hard for more than one or two to be good at a time. We've seen, we saw Southridge, South Dade have some good battles. Now Southridge is back. Homestead's good. South Dade is struggling a little bit more. It's been hard. There's a lot of talent down there, but those are three really big high schools, and it's been hard for all three of them to be good at the same time. So it's definitely you could see a shift of power down there again, or Homestead could keep it rolling and build on what was the best season in program history.
Well, there's not going to be a shifting of power of the next two teams we're going to talk about. I think these two are going to continue to roll. It's a shame one of them had to leave that stadium a loser the other night. Unfortunately, the way things are set up right now. But a battle of top 10 teams between Miami Central and Plantation American Heritage. Central, the dominant team throughout the first half in this game, thanks to Keon Jenkins, an Auburn commit who had another great game, 3 touchdown passes, 1 on the ground. Here's his first one to Anjuan Coleman to get things started for the Rockets. But Heritage had an answer for those Rockets, and his name was Mark Fletcher, and we knew he was going to have a huge one to keep Heritage in and give them a chance, and he did. Here's not a touchdown that he had, but more of probably one of the best runs he had all night, carrying guys toward the goal line. Here, take a look. But even after Fletcher cut it to 17-10, here came Jenkins once again, hits Corey Washington, one of the most beautiful throws I've seen Jenkins make this season. And here's Jenkins on the ground as he's done so impressively throughout the year, giving Central a dominant 31-10 lead at one point in the game. To the Patriots' credit, though, they cut back into it. They got a field goal before the half, and then Byron Lewis scored near the goal line here to make it a 10-point ball game. But speaking of running games, we talked about Central turning it up on the ground over the final few weeks of the season. Here's Jonathan Harris, one of those underrated running backs, breaking loose for the biggest run of the game in this 2-on title game. I think my favorite spot there is the kid that turned, started celebrating, and then he looked like, let me make sure he scored. Okay, and then he kept on celebrating. That would be the funniest thing. And then Brandon Innes, of course, Heritage wasn't done. He hauls in this touchdown pass from Blake Murphy to pull Heritage again within 10 points. And kind of the way it did when Central faced Columbus and nearly blew that lead. It got within one score, 38-31. Heritage with the ball. But poor Malachi Toney gets the ball stripped from Ruben Bain's prodigy, Ezekiel Marcelin, the talented sophomore there. And then, of course, who else is going to make the big fumble recovery for the Rockets but Mr. Bain himself? Here's a look at how Central sealed the game. Let's take a look at it. Here's what Ruben Bain had to say after he capped his high school career: an impressive 58 sacks for his the entire 58 and a half sacks actually.
The last 2 years, right?
Yeah. The last 2 years, and tremendous career. Here's what Ruben had to say about going out on top.
Have you been to that man right there, number 17, Ezekiel Marcelin?
A lot. I always try to tell him to be his best person. Yeah. He's the best of the country. Don't worry about anything else. Just do your job.
How proud were you of him making the play there when you guys needed it the most?
Very proud. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is really foreshadow all the ability we're going to have in the years to come.
Have you thought about what the accomplishment? A coach said that losing to you is like a disease. Like you just don't want any part of it. Your whole career you've been a winner. I mean,
I've been winning 4 years straight. Nobody can really say they did that, so I'm not really having that chance. But really be immune to losing, yeah, it's a great feeling. I never lost it.
Yeah. Why is Central different? Like, what about the program is just different from anywhere else?
It's the brotherhood and the camaraderie we have with each other. Also, just that work we put in. We put in day in and day out. We always put in work. There's never a day where we slacking. So it's the brotherhood and the work we put in.
Going to hear now also from Keon Jenkins, who was the MVP once again on the offensive side of the ball. And as good as Central is, they don't get this done without some of the plays he made this year. Here's Keon.
The national champs. That feels great. So I feel like they trying to treat us out. They trying to treat us out natty. It is cool though. It's really just standing here. State championship year after year. It feels great. I went out with a bang. I won the best quarterback in Dade County and the best to come through my mission.
It seems like coach is very emotional talking about, inner city schools play football too, and he's just working on that. It's not just the Miami Central, but the entire community. Just talk about that, how much that means to you, both in the whole Miami Central community.
It means great. Knowing we got the city on our back, knowing we can bring the crowd out and support us. But it's not really about the fans at the end of the day. It's about the guys between the lines on the sideline and all the guys between the lines at practice day in, day out.
How much did you guys feel the chip on your shoulder, knowing that, Max Press never gives you that number one nod, but now they can't deny you guys?
That was our main goal. We know we came in and put up more than 40, and we won the game, because that's a top 10 team. They'll probably give it to us, but we know we national champs. We don't care what Max Press says. It's cool.
Keon, coach says you guys wear that brand, that Central, like it's Gucci, like it's something different about this program. Why is it different?
I say winning state championship is the standard. It's a brotherhood, it's a family. Everybody love each other, we trust each other, and we know we can count on each other when things get harder.
The matchup tonight, 4 touchdowns that you had. Talk about the way you approached it, attacking their defense from early on.
I say we really wanted to come in, attack slots. and really run the ball. We knew we could come in and run everything. They gave us a 40 front and a 50 front, so that's pretty easy for us. I made my checks, I made my reads. I missed a couple throws here and there. You know, that's unlike me, but you know, I can live with it. I'm gonna get back in the lab and work on it, and go on film and see what I missed.
You're always a real chill dude, man. I got to get some emotion, man. It's got to feel good. 4 championship rings for you. I mean, I got to get a little bit more than this, like, half smile, man. You're a champ, bro. National champ.
I've been winning my whole life. I don't know. It ain't hit me yet. It'll probably hit me tomorrow. But I'll be in Auburn tomorrow morning, so it'll probably hit me yet.
All right. I want to see a backflip soon. There you go. There you go.
Even Keon, no matter how much they try to get him to break character there. But let's see Jude Joseph, what he had to say. That's obviously was a tremendous. He was really candid after the game at just what kind of the things that Central has to behind the scenes overcome to be at the standard that they've accomplished. 9 state championships in 13 years is really something that I don't think if any program in the state has been able to do. Here's what Jude had to say.
How proud of you guys, Coach? How proud of Heritage? How proud of you guys? You never gave up on this game.
I mean, at the end of the day, man, I always said our toughest opponent was minus such a run. Once we got our own way, we were able to figure some things out. You know, the championship game, some things gonna go left, some things gonna go right. But things go right for the Rockets today. One of our own tough kids, you know, we're neighborhood heroes. The role model. The leaders in the building and in the community. And today, they showed, you know, no wavering against adversity. There's an 8-year-old in the stands right now. Watching that. So when that situation happens, you stand tall and you rise for your game. And that shows character. And that character is a testament to the family that raised you and the coaches that praised you.
Every time I talk, you're always even keel, but a little extra excitement now that it's all said and done.
Oh, yeah. I'm always teaching telling kids to focus on the smaller things, the details, the little things. We always focus on want to know every day, want to know every play. You know, we talk about the setting of the game, about how it's great for the South Florida football, how it's great for the culture. But our kids focus on the game at hand. You can't gotta ignore the outside noise and focus. And the kids focus together. Let's see, 4 in a row. Just think about it as this. I did it for the neighborhood. This is the never see the school. And last resource. We must be the greatest! Because you need that first situation. Inner city schools play football too. Inner city schools play football too. And they stand up on the situation. And they go represent the neighborhood. And they go represent who the fans are and the coach them when they're in the league. Congratulations. National champ, baby!
I love Dwight Jackson, the longtime assistant coach there, the Lord
running
of the
out
Rings.
of figures.
Lord of the Rings, running out of figures. But after all of this, we just have one question left. And how about that, Natty? Is it theirs? I mean, I think that's it sure isn't Chaminade's anymore. That's for sure. I mean, after what happened to the Lions this weekend, thoroughly thumped by Bishop Gorman, 317 yards on the ground by the Gales, 6 touchdowns, 49-14 defeat. Unfortunately, what a turnaround! Chaminade goes from doing that to Clearwater Central Catholic to getting that done to them and completely dominated almost in pretty much every phase of the game. Although we know the Lions will be back strong in 2023. Probably, you know, a lot of those guys are coming back, a lot of their key players, and it's tough to go all the way to Las Vegas and they didn't even know. I mean, they got an idea, but the game was on officially on Monday, so pretty much a week to prepare. While Gorman had a month off to get ready for this, even though they were missing a few kids. But you know, the national title picture now, when you look at it, it could shift toward the voters could say, let's give it to one of the West Coast teams after seeing what Gorman did. It could give it to them, could give it to Mater Dei, could give it to St. John Bosco. But all 3 of those teams have one loss. Central does not. And High School Football America seems to agree, as they had Central #1 going into this weekend. David, how do you think this thing is going to shake out?
I was out there on Monday, and the big talking point a lot of the guys had was we just need one of these polls to put us #1. Seems like High School Football America is going to have that just based on what the rankings sit at right now. I'm not sure exactly when those come out, but yeah, I mean, it's I love Jude Joseph shouting about inner city schools and public school football, because you look at all these other I'm looking at the Max Rep rankings right now. The top 7 teams, every one of those is a private school, except for Miami Central. And I know obviously Miami Central is unique, right? And we know the way Florida is, where talent congregates. They can do that better than public schools can in a lot of other states, but it's still different. I mean, Andre, you've been out there at Miami Central at those practice fields with crooked goalposts and cows hanging out in the field next door. And
cars lighting up the field after 6 o'clock so they have any kind of lights.
It's just, I mean, it's such an incredible accomplishment. And, you know, there's no, you know, they're not any different necessarily than Northwestern or Booker T or Carroll City or Norland or these other schools we've seen, but they right now are doing it better than anyone. And you talk about a program. I mean, you look at Anwan Coleman, who catches that first touchdown. That's like their number 5 receiver. He's a sophomore.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like these guys just get better as the year goes on. Nicholas McCall, their running back who started the game, was on JV like a month ago. Like they just develop and know when to unleash guys in certain roles. It's a really young defense. They're another team that's going to be going for 5 in a row. I mean, you look at like I said, all these teams at the top of the rankings, everyone's got one loss except Miami Central. It's hard to make a case against Miami Central right now. They beat IMG. They have a signature win there too. And, you know, they've got as good a resume as anyone in the country.
Yeah, I mean, people will point to IMG, and that's their best one, but Heritage counts. That's a top 10 victory.
Those are 2 top 10 teams in the country.
Yeah. And even Columbus. Columbus was very close to being, I think, at the end of the season, top 25.
I think they were 23 in Max Preps rankings going into the game. Right. So, yeah, I mean, those are a lot of impressive wins. Northwestern, obviously, twice.
Yeah, I mean, and 9 state titles in 13 seasons, and a national title already once. They just it's the thing you're saying about developing talent, and the reason the Anwan Colemans get there is because, like, you and I see the games when they're beating Northwestern or Columbus, because those are the marquee games that we want to go see. But when they're beating St. Brendan by 60, or they're beating I don't know, other years HML, let's say, by 50 or 60, that's when the Anwan Colemans of the world go in and they get key minutes in those games, not just coming in the fourth quarter. They're coming in maybe in the second quarter when they haven't built that lead up yet, getting key reps and working. And that's how they develop. They let those young kids get that taste of it. Even in the big games, they'll sprinkle them in and they'll have big moments because of that. And then they're ready to go. So next year, an Anwan Coleman or someone like him, you'll see him being the guy that starts that big game against Northwestern or whoever it might be at the time. But moving on from that, I mean, Keon Jenkins, we're gonna salute our players of the week in our polls this week. Remember to vote for our player of the week polls. They're available at MiamiHerald.com. Some good candidates again this week: Hector Chavez, Keon Jenkins, who we just mentioned. On the basketball side, Oscar Sanchez for Braddock had a great game, 13 points, 4 assists, and 2 steals, and hit the game winner against Coral Reef to get a key early victory there. St. Brendan's boys soccer team, who we know won a state championship last year, Daniel Reyes had 3 goals and an assist combined in a couple of early victories there. And Michaela Brown of Gulliver for girls basketball, 16 points, 15 rebounds, 10 assists, a triple-double early in the season. On the Broward side, a kid we didn't mention for Aquinas, Keyshawn Johnson, 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. He was the leader of that defensive front the other night for the Raiders. He's one of the candidates for the player of the week, along with American Heritage boys soccer forward Juan Otero, who had a couple goals in wins over Naples and Monarch. Gabriela Gomez, Pinecrest throwing a bone to weightlifting, which we normally don't do. But Pinecrest is one of the few programs that has it down here. She won a few events and won top honors at a meet recently. Jamaite Hott, boys basketball player at Somerset, also 28 points and 6 assists and an early win over Cardinal Newman. He's one of the top scorers in the state so far over at Somerset. And Grace Dykstra, Stoneman Douglas High girls soccer, they're undefeated so far this season, and she's been key to 2 big victories against West Broward and Pines Charter, one of their top scorers. So again, vote for the players of the week at MiamiHerald.com. It's free. It's not behind the paywall. You can vote as many times as you want. And that, ladies and gentlemen, takes us to our quick signing day preview, our final segment today. We don't have our picks because there's no more season, so now we're going to end it with this look ahead. Some big news, as we were talking about before. Ruben Bain not only wins the Natmore Trophy, but breaks the news in front of everybody over there at the Hard Rock. You and I, David, were there seeing it in person. As he says, he's a Cane. He's Hurricane Bain through and through completely now. He even threw up the U after a sack in that game the other night. So Mario Cristobal to say, I mean, he's not done locking up local talent, but tremendous victory. They may have had a terrible first season on the field, but they're getting it done. As you saw Bain do that just after Dillard's, Christopher Johnson did. And now, as of Sunday night, Mark Fletcher, that's right. If you've been under a rock the last 48 hours, Mark Fletcher is also going to go to UM. This is a tremendous get in total for the Canes. What do you think of just the way they're building here? Let's start with Fletcher. What you saw, you suffered through that season watching them this year, David. How much of a difference do you think a Mark Fletcher can come in right away and just give them an even better? Can he be the featured back, not just play right away? Can he be the featured back very early next season?
I don't know about featured back right away. I mean, he should have Henry Parrish back unless he surprisingly decides to enter the draft. But I mean, we saw how bad the injuries were at running back for them last year, right? Don Chaney didn't play until the last game of the year. Parrish missed a couple of games. Trevante Citizen, who I think a lot of people, the buzz behind the scenes, who was their big recruit out of Louisiana last year, there was a lot of buzz that he was going to be a big part of the offense. He didn't play a single game after getting hurt in the preseason. But Fletcher, I mean, was he the most impressive guy we saw all weekend? Like he's up 110 yards in the state title game. Like he looks like, and he's not just a big, he's a big guy, but he's not just a big guy at running back, right? He's got speed. He's got balance. I mean, his balance is incredible when he takes a hit and just keeps moving. Never loses momentum. It's obviously a huge get for Miami. The only thing is these are all freshmen, right? It's gonna take some time for them all to be big contributors, but the big promise of Mario Cristobal was that he was going to recruit, and he is recruiting right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we get a little excited thinking, he's going to play right away, and he will.
He'll help. He'll
get some touches, but yeah, he has to develop a little bit. It's always a bit of a transition, no matter how good you are.
And Henry Parrish is good. He was like
Henry Parrish
running back, yeah.
Absolutely, and he's going to be the older player. He's going to have the more experience, but it's not too far fetched to think that down the road, Mark Fletcher looks like the guy who could take over this backfield in a not too long amount of time, not too distant future there, which is
he looks like an SEC running back, like one of those guys you see for Georgia or for Alabama who just
future NFL guy we'll have on our fantasy teams in a few years, you name it. Yeah, exactly. So and that's where Miami needs, that's the talent Miami needs to get where they're hoping to get down the road. And another one like that we mentioned before is Ruben Bain on the defensive side of the ball. This kid looks like the same thing you're saying, a high-level SEC type player that can be, at least a 3-year contributor on the team. And tell the audience a little bit, just David, from seeing this team, just the kind of impact, not only in the short term, because next year they're going to need everyone they can get as they get younger, but in the long term, if and when this team does get to the level they want to get to, this kid has impressed me just on and off the field with his maturity. How helpful is that going to be, not just on the field, but even in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've gotten a lot of high character guys. I don't want, I don't know everyone super well, but we both know Ruben pretty well, and he's like all about the right things. Nathaniel Joseph, who was another Nat Moore finalist, they said he had a 4.1 GPA. By all accounts, like really, really smart kid. Like they've gotten a lot of the right character kind of kids. I think Mark Fletcher is another one who seems to check all those boxes. But yeah, I mean, Ruben, the thing I love about Ruben is he's, by like standard, by like most standards, he's a little small to be a defensive end, just height, lengthwise, only probably 6'2". When all these, 5-star top 100 type kids, they tend to favor the 6'4", 6'5" guys. But he was just so good across his 4 years. He's already been all county for us 3 times. And to the odds are pretty good he's going to make it again this year. And he just kept rising up the rankings, because how can you deny a guy who has 4 sacks against IMG Academy, right? Like he's going to help. He's another guy, defensive ends, especially those guys can play early because you just can play 15 snaps. Nigel E. Kelly was similar out of Dillard last year. I kind of guess maybe similar role. They're different types of players. Nigel Leak's more of like a raw athlete, speed kind of guy, whereas Ruben reminds me of Chad Thomas a little bit, where you could kick him inside and rush a little bit as a third down guy too. But yeah, he's one of the best defensive players to come out of Dade County in a long time, and there's a lot of good defensive players who come out of Dade County.
Yeah, and Ruben gave us I think our most used photo, the money shot of him like this. After the IMG win, so that was great. And well, we've talked about Bain. We know Central's going to be a hot spot on signing day. Heritage, of course, as well, as we await Damari Brown's decision. Yes. What's he going to end up doing? But David, take people that are watching this through and listening to this a little bit through. What else can they look forward to on signing day? Obviously, we have a few more undecided kids like Daniel Harris at Gulliver. We've got Edwin Joseph at Chaminade as well, who's going to have his decision. Stanquan Clark, he's committed to Louisville, but will he stick? Will he not? I mean, who else can they look for?
Yeah, I mean, there's Miami's been trying to flip a lot of kids, right? They're definitely the story, I would say, of this cycle down here, which has not always been the case, right? There's been some years where it's like, oh, Georgia came in and got 2 of the top 3 kids or whatever. Or Alabama came in and got a bunch. But, they've been they're still trying to flip Brandon Innes, or they were as of a couple days ago. That Stanquan Clark is another guy they recruited for a long time. I think American Heritage is obviously going to be the big spot to watch with Damari Brown. Miami-Alabama battle. If Miami can fend off Alabama and keep him home, that's another real statement for Mario Cristobal. Alabama, of course, got Patrick Surtain out of there, and Earl Little Jr., their last 2 great cornerbacks they had in the last couple cycles. So they've got definitely an in over there at American Heritage, and there's a legacy of those guys going to Alabama. So that's definitely the single big school to watch. It's going to be relatively a drama-free day, I think. I mean, something always happens that you don't expect, right? Maybe someone decides to wait to sign. Miami's also maybe trying to flip Conrad Hussey from Penn State. Florida State also trying to get in there. Miami is the clear winner, I think, of this recruiting cycle down here. I think Florida State, though, has done a pretty good job, too. Obviously, they've got Hakeem Williams, who's the top-ranked guy from the area. They're in there on Conrad Hussey. They got Lamont Green Jr. from Gulliver. You'll be out there on Wednesday morning to watch him sign. He had a monster senior season there. And then I think, I wrote our preview earlier today and spotlighted a couple of the smaller schools. FAU, FIU both did a good job, as you'd expect. And Western Carolina, getting Teron Dickens, getting who was our player of the year last year, quarterback from Northwestern. Santana Fleming, an Under Armour All-American from Western. Trayvon Martinez, a safety for Dillard, who's been an all-county guy for us. They've done a really good job down here the last couple of cycles. FCS program that is definitely trying to build by just kind of getting all those, the guys in South Florida that everyone knows are good, but maybe a little too small or have some flaw that keeps them from being FBS guys. They're cleaning up with those kind of guys.
I bet nobody had them on the directional Carolina bingo card today of who would be the one that dominated the next tier of South Florida recruits. But there you have it. And that shows you how deep the talent pool is.
Yeah, they did the same thing last year. Desmond Reed from Miramar ran for 800 yards for them as a true freshman. So
there you go.
It's working for them.
Yeah, if you gain even a little bit of a root down here of some sort, you got to tap it as long as you can, because there's so much talent to have down here. And that's why you see all these schools popping up at different levels, not just at the D1 level, but even FCS and below that. And because there are kids galore that can make an impact at the next level. So we'll see how it goes on signing day. Tune in to MiamiHerald.com. We'll have plenty of story content, videos. We'll have total blanket coverage, you could say, of Dade and Broward. David will be out there giving you most of that, as well as how the Hurricanes class finally not wraps up, because obviously they have another one until February, but how this early period sort of wraps up. Do they get some of these recruits that David was talking about? Do they make a few guys flip? We'll let you know. We'll cover all that for you, plus FIU and every other school throughout the state. For Andre Fernandez, he's David Wilson. We thank you very much for joining us these 15 episodes. We are going to take a 2-week break now for the holidays. So we wish everybody happy holidays. We'll be back with our next episode in early January, where we will pick up right there on the recruiting topic, how things are going after the early period and heading into the final signing date in February. So until then, again, happy holidays. Have a safe one, everybody, and we'll see you next time.